So how did the warrior breath work out for you? Maybe yes, maybe no. Practice, takes practice. Let's move on. So remember how I said that the yoga practice has a beginning, middle, and an end. The pose that I'm going to teach you next, the child's pose, can actually be used in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. And it's a good connector to go from one pose and into another. It's also an excellent pose for resting. So when you get super tired during your practice or just want to chill out, you take your child's pose. Child's pose, otherwise known as Balasana in Sanskrit, is a perfect pose for resting. But you will probably find that this pose, even though it's a resting pose, has a lot of nuances and it may not be as comfortable as you think it would be. So, this is how you execute a child's pose. It's very simple. Starting on our knees, placing our toes or digging in our toes into the ground. We're going to bring our sit bones, these bony parts in our butts, these bones, and we're going to bring them over to our heels as close as possible. So this is where if you have super tight quads, you're going to start feeling some stretching here. The next thing is simply to relax and walk your hands forward until you can bring your elbows into the floor. Now, if this is comfortable, you can start reaching forward with the head. So, a couple of things here. If this feels super uncomfortable, block is your friend. We can place a block in front of us and we can reach down with our head onto the block. We can also have a yoga bolster in front of us and we can bring our chest all the way down into the yoga bolster. Now, at one point, you want to untuck your toes and see if you can bring your sit bones even closer into your heels. Essentially, the child's pose looks like this, and it's a complete resting pose with your chest resting on your thighs, head touching the floor. There's a couple of variations here. If you feel that it's a little bit suffocating or maybe you're packing a little bit more weight in your lower abdomen, then you can take this pose with wide knees. So open your knees a little bit wider. That's going to create this space where you can collapse your belly and your chest. And maybe that's going to be a bit more comfortable and not as suffocating because when you're lying on your thighs with your chest and your abdomen, there's not a lot of space for your body to move, to take in the breath. So opening your knees will make this pose a little bit easier. And if you feel that you can't really reach down and connect your sit bones with your heels, you can always come up on your toes and give a little bit more height. So find what works for you. Remember, releasing to the floor. And as you're holding this pose, another thing to try is to stretch out your arms next to your body, palms facing up. This has a nice effect on stretching out the shoulders. So the shoulders will start collapsing down into the floor under the force of gravity. And this is actually an excellent pose to observe how gravity is your friend in yoga. It does the stretching for you. So if you hold this pose for a few moments, you notice that your body will slowly start collapsing into the floor. And especially if you're holding your arms next to your body, your shoulders will start melting forward. If your arms are extended in front of you, you'll feel a very nice stretch in your lats and your shoulders. So this pose can get super comfortable. And this is the pose that we're going to be using to rest during the practice. It can also be used in the beginning of the practice when you want to sort of zone in into the practice, and it can also be used at the end of the practice where you want to just do a final rest after the yoga sequence. So take this pose. Let's take a moment here to see how that feels. Notice where your body connects with the floor. Notice any tension. Notice any pinching, any discomfort in your body as you're holding this pose. Experiment with bringing your elbows a little bit closer to the body. Experiment with placing the head on your forehead. Maybe you can also try to reach down and place your head with one ear and then the other. Give your neck a bit of a twist. Experiment with doing this pose with your knees closed and your knees open. Notice how the breath unfolds for you. And on the next exhalation, slowly come up from this pose into sitting. This is Balasana, and I don't think there's no way you can do it wrong.